Hello, thanks for joining me. What I would like to talk about here is conspiracy theories, but I want to narrow it down a little bit because obviously, in the whole realm of conspiracy theories, there's a lot of intriguing things to discuss. There's a wide range of things to look at. So, I'm not going to be talking about any specific conspiracy theory. Rather, I want to talk about a certain angle, a certain trajectory that certain conspiracy theorists go down these days, and it's something to take issue with. I'm going to try and articulate why. So I came across a video by someone called Annie Logical. In my opinion, there was nothing very logical about what she was trying to suggest. But anyway, in her video, she's talking about the Westminster terror attack. Now, her whole philosophy seems to be that it's all fake, or at least there's some big cover up. And the video is about 10 minutes long. I'll try and put a link to this so that you can compare and make your own views. But all the comments were supportive of her because this tends to be the traction with people who are skeptical of conspiracy theories, don't tend to waste time sort of trying to counter the narrative. They don't see it as important enough. And I have to be honest, this is a video I've wanted to make for some time, but I sort of thought, well, why give it more ammo? On the other hand, I think it is valid to address some of the things that they claim. Now, in this video, she says that there was a particular photographer, forget the guy's name, apparently he's a royal photographer, and she argues that because he was responsible for all the official photographs of people lying wounded on the ground and so on, that there was something suspicious about this, and she says that he also covered the Paris attacks. Anyway, she's really putting a lot of focus on this individual. She also is homing in on certain photographs, claiming they don't make sense. For example, the well-documented photograph that shows Tobias Ellwood MP trying to resuscitate PC Palmer. She cast doubt on that on the grounds that there's no police tape, um, and she says that knives don't appear to have blood on them, and she's she's homing in on a lot of details that she is purporting mean something. And that seems to be the whole traction of her argument. Um, so that's the case I've been looking at. That is the video that I'm going to be basing this on. Now, there's many, many others, but for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to focus on that. And then just sum up really my thoughts on the philosophy of conspiracy theories and where they seem to have been going in recent years in terms of the online community. Okay, so the things that she is talking about, this photographer, firstly, that is not factually true because there have been other photographs of the day from a wide range of sources, from witnesses who were there. One of the first photographs that emerged, I saw online, was sort of showing the side of Westminster Bridge. It was like from the road angle, and it was kind of someone wooded on the ground, people walking past. There was one photograph that emerged of a young Somali woman physically shocked. Unfortunately, she received some abuse. That's kind of going into another area, but I'll just say it in passing because she was wearing a hijab and people thought, oh, she doesn't care. Actually, the young lady was in a great deal of shock, so that was, shame on those who were attacking her. But anyway, that photograph was not by this official photographer. So she's implying that all the official, the photographs that are available were by one guy. That is categorically not the case. He may have taken a lot of them, but even if he did, that doesn't prove anything one way or the other. Because if you're going to say this proves it's all fake, then you're disregarding the other photographs. So even if you go down the lines that this guy isn't trustworthy and his photos are fake, which I think is, I don't give that much credence at all. But even if you give weight to that theory, how does that explain all the other photographs on the day? Now, homing in on some of these details and insinuating that they're very important, the issue about police tape. I'm not an expert on policing. I don't know all the protocol, but as I understand it, they put up police tape when, for example, there's an ongoing murder investigation. Let's say, for example, they've been called out to a domestic dispute and I don't know, a guy kills his wife, then they'd put up a police tape because it's a crime scene investigation. The Westminster attack, of course, was a crime scene investigation, but it was an ongoing situation. So I think we have some of the most professional security services in the world. But to home in on something like that, like the supposed absence of police tape, like it means something. Firstly, you don't know the angle that that picture was taken from. So it could have been zoomed up beyond the tape. But even if there's no tape there, I really don't think that's particularly important because in the heat of the moment, it's hardly a priority. The priority was saving people's lives. So that's. I mean, there was no police tape put around the Lee Rigby case until a good bit after police had arrived and so on. So I think it's misguided to suggest that you could compare an ongoing attack situation to a static crime situation, i.e., where there's already been a murder, rather than an ongoing situation. So she seems to be totally ignoring that factor, the human factor. Maybe it is protocol to put police tape up, but in the heat of the moment, I don't think it's a priority. Um, Police officers can testify to that one way or another, but I just don't think there's much weight behind that argument. But that seems to be the whole traction of this. And one thing I notice, and this is something a lot of conspiracy theorists do, they have photographs and they make links that are so utterly irrelevant. I mean, she started a video with pictures of the royal wedding. And I think it was the royal wedding, it might have been the Queen's Jubilee, but these royal photos, like they've got any significance. Now, maybe the guy is a royal photographer, so what? He was in London, there was an ongoing situation, he's a photographer. The idea that there's some. I really despair. I really despair that there are people out there who have convinced themselves so much that everything is a big facade. And this is where I'm going to get into my own views on this angle of conspiracy theories. Here's the thing, I'm not one of these people that says, oh, all conspiracy theories are nuts. I don't believe that. And I don't believe that in the corridors of power, there is not a capability of covering things up. And it would be incredibly naive to say that in history there hasn't been many examples of cover ups at the highest level. And we've seen recent examples. The Jimmy Savile abuse case was covered up. We've seen other examples. So I've no problem with people asking questions. I've no problem with people questioning official media reports and certain angles of them. But what I do have a problem with is going down the line of being so adamant to prove your own ideology that you're willing to believe absolutely anything. Absolutely anything. Doesn't matter how out there it is, doesn't matter how irrational it is. If it makes your target look bad, then it's fair game to you. So in other words, if there was something that presented the target, i.e., in this case, the establishment, whether that be the government or the media or whatever, in a bad light, people like Annie Logical, and she's not alone, will use it to try and make a point. But the points that they're making are so vague and in most cases so coincidental that it's just irrelevant. And only a complete fool would actually give it serious weight. There are certain things regarding conspiracy theories that you do need to question. Let's take the Marilyn Monroe death, for example. There were some strange things about that. For example, when the police arrived, all her clothes were apparently washed early in the morning. Now that was quite strange. And there were a few things that were unexplained. There are other things. There's other well-known events that, again, there's question marks around. Dare I say it, there are a few question marks around 9/11, and there's others. There's many others. The Kennedy assassination is perhaps the best known, um, because there's more conspiracy theories connected with that, possibly even than 9/11. So I'm not saying that there's no weight behind conspiracy theories, and I don't think that conspiracy theory is a dirty word, because one day a conspiracy theorist someone might be a conspiracy theorist, and that next day they may be a government advisor. So I don't think that conspiracy theorists are dirty words. That's not what I'm arguing. What I'm saying is that certain types of conspiracy theorists want to believe things not because they're true, but because they simply want to believe them. And that is also true of those who follow people like Annie Logical. The other issue I take is there's a bit of arrogance there, because they believe that they're more informed than the rest of us. They believe that, I mean, she wasn't in Westminster, or she was, she didn't say that she was. So what gives her a right to assume that she knows something that the rest of us don't? I think there's a real arrogance there. And it's this tendency to just believe things because you want to believe them. Now they will say, "Oh, but you believe the mainstream media." Actually, I don't. I've often been critical of the mainstream media biases and so on, but nor do I believe that it's all a big lie. I don't think. I think if you really want to go down that avenue, the Trump school of thought, it's a really unfortunate way of thinking, because you then end up believing absolutely nothing. And to me, that is just as shallow, as ignorant, and as counterproductive as blindly being influenced by a particular source and like blindly believing it. That's where conspiracy theories stop just asking questions and they start to become cult-like. Um, and another big issue, and perhaps the biggest objection I have to this sort of conspiracy theory, is that it is insulting to victims of crime and terrorism. If you go down the line of saying that these things are all like staged events and the witnesses are paid actors, firstly, people respond to dramatic situations in different ways. Not everyone has exactly the same response. So, for example, you might sometimes see people smiling and so on. That to me doesn't mean they're faking it. It just means that certain people have a nervous laugh, a nervous smile. It's their way of coping with a stressful situation. It's a real thing. I've seen it in my own life. People who have laughed, and I got a bit annoyed. I said, "Why are you laughing at that?" And they said, "No, no, I'm not laughing, I'm nervous." So some people do have a nervous mannerism where they smile or laugh when they're nervous. Doesn't mean they're sick or something like that. Um, but paid actors, really, how low do you have to scrape? It's the same as those people who were coming out and claiming the Sandy Hook massacre was fake. Mostly they were just gun apologists. People who were so taken in by the gun lobby that they're prepared to scrape the barrel and claim that victims of a serious crime are faking it. That's something I really find hard to stomach. That people would be so partisan in their views that they're willing to insult victims of serious trauma to try and validate a point. And the only people that believe them are their own equally naive followers. So, any logical, this is the thing, conspiracy theorists don't like being called nuts. Well, okay, that's not really polite, but how do they think that victims of crime and terrorism feel when they hear people say, "Oh, it's all fake, it's all made up, it's an inside job," or it's all a staged event? So I would invite Annie Logical to go to the hospital where all those people are still being treated as I speak, and tell them that their injuries are fake. Tell them they didn't really experience a maniac mowing them down. Tell them that. This is where I really have a problem with that line of conspiracy theory. And they're predictable. They come out of the woodwork every time something like this happens. They crawl out of the woodwork to make their little claims. And, we have freedom of expression there. I would never say they can't do it. But they should also understand that they're going to be challenged. And it isn't because people love the government or love the media. It's because what you're saying is not logical. You're homing in on the most irrelevant things, the most trivial things, sometimes things that are not even connected. And I'm not talking about any logical specifically, I'm talking about the sort of conspiracy theorists that are really prominent online these days. I just feel really, I feel really sad about it. I saw the footage of the Rigby case. I wish it didn't. It was very depressing to see. But that was online, and you had the terrorists, the Islamists there, saying what he had done, saying why he done it. And yet someone underneath said, oh, this is all an inside job to make Muslims look bad. What the hell? So are you honestly telling me that the government employed a killer to do this, to make Muslims look bad? Or it doesn't matter the fact that they will be given a whole life jail sentence? Or are you saying they're a patsy? What's that's something I really struggle with, when people cannot just accept that there are bad people in this world. There are people who are driven by hatred and extremism. And for them, it's always, oh, there must be a government conspiracy. I just think it's a very sad way of looking at the world. It's a very... Actually, the Corrs, the Irish band, the brother, I forget his name now, but he's kind of went down this track of conspiracy theories. And one of his sisters, I think it was Andrea Corr, she was asked about this. And she said she loved her brother very much, but she felt sad for him that his worldview was so bleak. And I think that's... Yeah, I can't imagine living with questioning absolutely everything, because they think it's intelligent, they think it's open-minded. Here's the thing, there's nothing wrong with asking questions, there's nothing wrong with saying something doesn't quite add up here. But I do think there's a problem when you start to question everything to the point where you are clutching at trivial things. So, if you genuinely believe that the world is run by reptilian shapeshifters, I actually feel sorry for you. And I mean that sincerely. I feel sorry for you that you would have such a worldview that is so irrational, that instead of just saying, okay, well, politicians can be corrupt, you actually believe that they're reptilian shapeshifters. I think David Icke is, I think the man's a complete and utter fraud. But I think he's more than a fraud. I think he actually believes some of the stuff he comes out with. So he's both a fraud and somebody who has convinced himself that he's right, maybe to justify his fraud. Now, he has said, why would I lie about this, to be ridiculed for years? But it's certainly given him fame and attention. And there's a real arrogant streak about David Icke insofar as he believes he's like a cult leader. That's the problem I have with people like Icke. He's a cult leader, driven by arrogance. This notion that he knows something that the other 7,300,000,000 of us don't. So I'll leave it there. Let me know your thoughts about this sort of conspiracy theory. I'll try and put a link to Annie's video just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. Summed up, I'm not saying that all conspiracy theories are entirely wrong. I'm not saying that sometimes there's not things that are hidden and sometimes there are not things there, but sometimes it's just so far out there. And I'll give one last example before I close this up. Jesse Ventura's series, Conspiracy Theory, the former governor of Minnesota, former professional wrestler. Well, one thing about his series, that I did find it quite watchable. I admit it was quite interesting. I also think, like a lot of conspiracy theories, he was driven by arrogance, because he always started the show, I've been a governor, I've been a fighter, I've seen things that'll blow your mind. And he really played up the whole hard man image. I find that very off-putting, because I just find it arrogant. I mean, he was arrogant in the way he went about things, because he would go up to people he wanted to interview and say things like, you're not going to let a governor in? And I think the man's very arrogant. But in one of his episodes, even he questioned his researchers. He said, have we got so desperate that we're going to believe the reptilian shapeshifter thing? One more episode, it was about pandemics. His researchers found this kind of field, and it was full of plastic, basically coffins. Now, they used that to try and argue that the American government was covering up, a pandemic. Almost like the government would deliberately cause a pandemic, because that's one of the conspiracy theories that are out there. No one bothered to ask, well, wait a second, is this not simply a case that the government wants to be prepared if there is a pandemic? I mean, if you have a large-scale pandemic, people are dying en masse. It obviously makes the problem worse if people are decomposing in the street, so you need to bury them quickly. But they, of course, read something sinister into that. Oh, the government's comparing all these coffins for, killing everyone off, instead of the government's preparing these coffins because they need to be prepared in case a pandemic happens. So it's this business of always, always, always seeing something sinister in everything. It's a very cynical way to look at the world. Let me know your thoughts.